it's all recorded on the computer. So
Yep.
this one's going too. So here we are. So yeah, I guess like let's start off by, share with us like kind of your background, either touching on some of the stuff that I spoke about in the intro, maybe updating, adding a little bit of your own color and flavor, and leading up into transitioning into, how you got started to being a managing director at Faya. Did I pronounce that right? Faya?
Yeah, that's perfect, man. Like,
Okay.
Fire is correct. Yeah, we wanted it to sound like fire, but of course, you've got the IA there, and it just helps. Yeah, I'll talk more about like what the actual meaning is in Samoan. So story leading up to where we are today. How far back should I go?
As far
Well,
as you would like.
all right. So since I've been doing a trip around Asia Pacific area, let's touch on a bit of like sort of the cultural background. So I was originally born in Fiji. My father is Fijian Indian. My mother is Tuvaluan Samoan. And this will connect back to why we created Faya. And yeah, moved to Australia when I was around 2. Then grew up there for about 6 years. When I was 8, father had a job posting to Bangladesh, which then had me attending an American international school there for about 10 years. So I ended up graduating in Bangladesh. And during that time, I think being around all these other international students and kids, and then being taught by predominantly American teachers, it certainly shaped my worldview. And, I think I was definitely involved in a lot of gathering of people, connecting, and community stuff and cultural stuff, actually, even as young as then. And so then when I came to Australia, that was around 2015. That was for university. Ended up studying multimedia systems, computer science, and then did a master's in animation, of all things. So I was always fascinated by combining a bit of the technical computers. I was mad about computer tech, and then wanting to combine that with the creative side, which was animation. And I had no intentions of doing a master's in animation, but a teacher had seen one of my final thesis projects during my undergrad, and she said, you know what, you should come join our master's. So did that. Of course, it put me into more debt, but that was still a really interesting experience. Met some great people, and it helped shape some more things around just storytelling and how that connects to community aspects. So during my master's, I ended up finishing up or continuing a series that I had started called Tales from Nanumea, which was an animated series. And that animated series ended up getting the attention of Adobe. And so I remember that was kind of like the first time I saw Twitter having a real influence, or seeing how Twitter can connect you with other bigger players very quickly. And so they heard about the series, contacted me on Twitter, and said, "We've identified you as a key person of influence in this space." And I was like, "Yeah, right." It was weird. It was really weird, man. And I thought it was a joke at first. So I replied, and I didn't really think anything of it. But yeah, they ended up emailing me with details. Took me out to some 7-course Spanish dinner, and they wanted to learn more about the series. And then I found out that the reason why they had an interest was because they were wanting to support more creatives who are looking to use, of course, their tools for things that involved social impact type things. So this animated series was actually a nod to my mother's side, the Tuvaluan side. So she's, as mentioned, she's Tuvaluan Samoan. And at the time when I created the series, it was the series was for the island of Nanumea, which is one of the 8 islands that make up Tuvalu. And Tuvalu was at the forefront of climate change talks. So Tuvalu, the reason for that is because Tuvalu was said to be one of the first islands to sink if ocean levels continue to rise. So I think that's where that connection came in. So it was just, fortunate timing. But yeah, I created the series because I wanted to preserve all these dying stories. I had heard that a lot of elders, not just in the Polynesian communities, but also, other indigenous communities as well, that they were really worried about their stories dying, because there are a lot of cultures out there that had very strong oral traditions. And I'm explaining all this because it actually has very much to do with how I became the managing director for File. But so the storytelling aspect was really important, and animation in games was becoming a way for a lot of these cultures to preserve those stories. And so, yeah, that relationship continued with Adobe. I had a job as a front-end developer. That was my first real job. And while doing this, and then, but by doing the series, I actually learned a little bit more about the world of entrepreneurship, because as a result of the series, I had to start, learning how to market, promote, sell. And I had never really considered anything business related. My path at school was, just go and get a job and work for somebody. But I very quickly learned during my career that I enjoyed people. My feedback and the things that people would come to me for, people would always be coming to me either for advice or to talk to others for them. So imagine being in a team of developers, and every time the client called, nobody wanted to speak to the client. So they would turn to me and be like, George, can you speak to the client? So that ended up kind of pushing me towards a career that involved a lot more people-facing activities. And from the front-end role, moved on into a few other different roles, business development for a group called Key Person of Influence. Ironically, they are a personal brand accelerator. Learned a lot about sales in terms of like cold calling and scripting, etc. from them. And then landed in the co-working scene. And that was kind of my first foray into community management. I had no idea what a community catalyst was or what a community manager was. And, I looked at the job description and I was like, hey, this looks great. This seems like stuff that I'm doing already. And if I'm going to get paid for it, great. And mind you, while all this is happening, I'm still doing a lot of like side hustle businesses, coming in and out of like paid, full-time work, and then also attempting my own businesses. And got into the co-working industry, learned more about community management, and that's where I really realized that there was something here around community management that I think is sort of spelling out what the future is going to look like. And that kind of looks more like the soft skills being valued a lot more as technology and automation becomes more and more prominent. So I think it was around 29, at the age of 29, I was actually in Hawaii on Mount, I think it was Mount, I don't know if it was Kilauea or one of the other ones, but it was on the Big Island. And I asked myself, I'm about to hit 30. I was like, if I was going to choose anything to sort of double down on or master over the next 10 years, what would it be? And community came out on top. And I think it was very, very relevant to sort of my whole life leading up to that point, because culture, collaboration, community was interweaved throughout a lot of things that I got involved with. And so, yeah, that was the decision when that was when I made the decision to actually pursue community a lot more formally. And because before then, I was in the roles, but I was still searching. My 20s was actually still a lot about like trying to find my way, right, myself, and figuring out what I wanted to really focus on. And so then, that's when things started to accelerate. Will Smith has a quote saying that, in life, you just need to decide. There's always going to be many options. And once you decide, it's like the whole universe conspires to assist you. And that's definitely what I've been experiencing over the last couple of years, whereby after I made that decision, so many things just rushed towards realizing a lot of the goals that I had set or had. And that's kind of what led to Faya. I was working for a fintech company before this, and an opportunity came up to actually take what I had been doing for the last decade and actually start a consulting business around it. And as a result, I then did some scouting. This was 2000. last year. I went to every region and asked myself if there was any country in the world that I would set up my new company, where it would
Wait,
be.
can you say that one more time? It was
Yeah.
what year?
2018. This was just last year.
Oh, wow. Okay, last year. Got it. Sorry.
Yeah, so fresh. So the two cities that I ended up kind of narrowing down to was Singapore and Toronto. And the reason for that is because both cities are actually quite multicultural, and that really appealed. And then, but the reason why I ended up with Singapore is because Asia itself, I just felt like all of the future economic flow was going to be coming back into the East. And as I'm now traveling around and, meeting prospects and bringing on clients, it's just confirming that. And this has been happening for a while, but I was living in Australia, right, previously. So you definitely feel that isolation sometimes. But now that I've made my way back into Asia, can definitely see that happening.
No, that totally makes sense. And it's crazy to see how much you've learned, doubling down on community. And it's funny because that's like exactly what led us, right? Like we were doubling down and engaging in a community that we both learned a lot from. Definitely. And realized that we've been doing for the last like 5 years, 10 years, right? And so it's crazy to realize that. And that kind of leads me to the next question. Like, what are some of the feelings and emotions that you go through when you realize that you are speeding up and you have to start performing, right? Like I'm in this almost training camp mode right now with where I'm at right now and just like on my journey. And it's like resetting after a new job, also continuing the podcast, but also growing, and everything is becoming new, which is exactly what's supposed to happen, right? Like that's how I'm going, but there's so many new things, and it's like, wait, how do you remember to slow down, or like what do you do to stay grounded and focused?
That's a good question, and I've been seeing it pop up a lot more recently. I don't know why, but for me, one of the biggest lessons I learned, and it's funny because Gary Vee talks about this all the time, but patience, right? No joke. Before I got my last job at the fintech company. There was one of his videos that he created, because he only puts out a few like proper motivational videos, right? But there was one that was called Patience, and I remember I played that almost every day as I was on the hunt for my next job. And it actually, the reason why I think I resonated with it so much was because at that point in time, that's how the "it will come" phrase became or evolved to like a new meaning or definition for me. So you'll notice that the podcast is called The It Will Come Show. It will come actually comes from my great grandfather. So that saying has been in my family since I was born. My mom would always say, "Denalo efanatu," which is Tuvaluan for "it will come." And the backstory for that is, when Tuvalu was being colonized,
George, I'm not sure if that's me or you, but there's like a little bit of like static.
Let me see. I wonder if it's because I'm moving.
Oh, maybe that's why. Okay.
All right, hold on. Is it okay now?
Yeah, it's good.
Thanks.
I didn't know if that was my mic or Eva or something. I was like, what is that?
And it was probably me because I tend to like move when I'm speaking.
No, keep it moving. If that's your thing, bro, keep going. I just didn't know what's happening. Keep going.
Yeah, no worries, man. Just let me know if it returns.
Okay.
So
it will come. So yeah, keep it rolling.
So it will come. My great grandfather. He, at the time that Tuvalu was being colonized by Christian missionaries, there were my grandmother had come to my great grandfather and said, "Dad, Christianity is coming in now. We don't need any of the old ways. Like you can when you die, pretty much, can you take it all with you? Because I guess now that's considered evil stuff." And my great grandfather, so the story goes, said, "Okay, I'll take it with me. I can see what's happening now. But just know that in the future, my mokopunas, or like my descendants, my great grandchildren, will come back looking for the old ways." And then he said, "Denalo efanatu," it will come. And so I didn't really understand this until I got into my late 20s. And looking at everything that I've found myself in, it's always been related to culture, history, philosophy, communities, and how they interact, and a lot of the old ways. So actually, when it comes to community stuff, I'm finding myself digging deeper and deeper into the like ancient past or deep past in each culture versus, you know, just studying what is out today. I mean, it's important. Like we can learn things from it through data, but there I find that there's a lot of principles and things that, you know, are kind of timeless. And so whenever working with the community, I always try to take the time to understand their unique, you know, culture, language, or work with people who understand that before, you know, providing any solutions. And the more I do that, the more I learn about other cultures, the more I learn about myself. And that's why it's become really that whole process has become a grounding factor for me. So the patience bit is really about understanding that, you know, the elders and the old timers, they know that in nature, nothing is ever hurried or rushed, yet everything gets to where it's supposed to. And I think these days we're so used to maybe sometimes the hustle culture, or, you know, making everything urgent because technology has made things a lot faster. But you know, if you've ever surfed or been out in the ocean, right, you have to learn timing too. That the ocean waves, that there's something magical about that as well. Not always trying to force your will upon things. There's a time to do that, but there's also a time to not. And understanding the difference between those two, I think, is what's becoming more prominent as I get older.
Thumbs up to that. That's exactly this. Literally, that was me on Friday. I was realizing that we had like a team training, and basically someone, I guess, quick high level, basically did something that was amazing, right? Like from a biz dev perspective, mapped out our whole territories, all the contacts, all the key players, all that, right?
Yeah.
And I was like, how long did that take you to do? And she was like, 2 weeks, roughly. And then I realized that like I've only been playing this game for 3 weeks. So I've
Yeah.
only literally only had 3 weeks worth of at bats, and I'm trying to do something that someone that is already leveled up at the game that I'm playing.
Mm.
She already leveled up, and I'm trying to do something that she did that took her 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And yes, I know and understand that I feel like I have certain levels and skills of ability and performance to where like I can, you know, get there, right? But it's just going to take time. And that's something that's tough because you're like, man, like I got to do this thing and I'm being, you know, I got to perform. And
Mm.
then you got to realize like, dude, like you literally didn't even get out of training camp yet. Like
Yep.
you,
Yep.
so you have to have that conversation with yourself and then level set like, okay, like where am I and how am I going to not let the losses, right? Like I just look at it. I used to play safety.
Mm.
So I look at it like, man, like it's 3rd and 12. Like, let me not let up this first down.
Yeah.
And I'm 2 for 3. And that this one time, like, man, they got a first down. But like it was actually 2nd and 4 and they got a first down. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Not 3rd and 3 in the Super Bowl. You know what I'm saying? Like
Yep.
that's what it feels like sometimes to people, right? Like when you're in a sales role, like you can speak to this, when you're in a biz dev role and it's the end of the quarter, like it's the Super Bowl. It feels like the Super Bowl,
It
actually. It's
feels
kind of
like
like
this.
it's the
Yeah.
playoffs. It's not the Super Bowl. The Super Bowl is the end of the year when you have to hit your number. Like,
Yeah.
but the quarters are kind of like, you know, the playoff games. And so for someone that's only been in a stage for 20 something days to being put on to perform within that time frame, it does something to you really, really fast. And you don't really realize it's happening. And then you get all frantic and like, like, I don't know how to do this. And then all of a sudden you have to take a timeout and go do a huddle with
Yep.
yourself and say, wait, what are you confused about? Like, what's going on? And then you say, well, I didn't know where to focus. And then
Mm.
you say, well, why not? Like your whole thing is teaching other people how to focus on the accounts that matter most. So how do you not know how to do that by now? And
Yeah.
then I was like, oh, wait, you already know how to do that. So go do that and only do it in batches that make sense. So do it in small, tiny pieces. Thanks, Tim Ferriss, again, for that
Yep.
selection in the, you know, DIS method. Like use that. Now go focus on those companies and get some key pieces of data that you can use to better segment the outreach and go
Mm.
do. And I had to have that conversation with myself and multiple other people because I wasn't accepting that, like, I'm only 25 days in or whatever the day is. And it's like really tough because like who you talk to, like it's really tough. And that's one thing that I want to share with people. It's like, yo, like I know what it's like to be the new kid on a football team and to not know what the plays and have to sit on the sidelines for 2 months until the coach puts me in for one play where I blitz off the edge or I play strong safety and roll down or whatever the case is. Then they're like, oh wait, we have to find a way to get him on the field more. Like that's just all that happens, right? So
Yeah.
you just have to be patient and capitalize on the opportunities and use the skills that you have and do your best, right? Like you're not going to be perfect. I'm looking back at my old podcast episodes and I'm like, holy, all the words. Like I didn't have anything down. And now, like even straight up honesty with this one, it's like we put this together last minute, but like I have an agenda and a framework and a process that I don't know. I sent this to you, what, 10 minutes before the episode?
Yeah.
And it's fine. Like I'm not flustered or anything, but like had this been my second episode, it wouldn't have been the same. So yeah, definitely love you pointing out the importance of patience. And, you know, when you play that sort of message over and over again, you start to do it subconsciously. And I realized that too, like the Gary Vee stuff that I've taken on real quick is like, well, one, I have 7,000 videos on my phone.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I literally will tell people I'm not a videographer or I'm not a photographer or anything like that, or I don't document my life, or I need to find better ways to document my journey. And then I looked back at Twitter and was like, oh, wow, like I just started talking more about it because I have a podcast and like I have people that are doing cool stuff. Let me document my notes. And so like I literally was thinking I wasn't doing it, but subconsciously, because I've listened to every episode almost, it just happened. Like that's one thing that I'm like, I don't know if you've experienced that, but it's just like, wait a minute, this is all already happening. Like I'm already this thing that I didn't think I was, you know?
Yeah. Spot on, man.
Yeah. So I guess speaking on that topic of like patience, like what are some of the other, you know, different ways that you learned on your journey? Like what sorts of skills were self-taught? Like what things did you pick up from others? Did you learn from books? Like what are some of the different ways that you learned?
Self-taught. Yeah. So, well, first up, man, like, thanks for sharing your side too around the patience. I think one thing I did want to say about that is that I think that as I get older again, I'm starting to, maybe I'm becoming Taoist, but the yin and yang symbol has become very, very meaningful for me, because it's like as the world speeds up, things like the message of patience actually is really spot on because it balances things out. So, you know, having folks like Gary Vee out there and then spreading that message, I think is a great like counterbalance to the culture of speed that we have. And yeah, if there comes a time when you're too slow, then speed becomes the main message and the right one. But in terms of learning, what skills self-taught? I mean, I always enjoyed learning things to do with technology from a very young age. I wouldn't say I was like, you know, any of the part of the genius camp at school, but I think my social skills were pretty decent. And, you know, hence why I'm now in this type of role. And also, you know, I learned too that like people who do have good social skills, of course they can make it. You know, it started to show itself in sales, in marketing, in customer service. And so it was just learning how to like translate those things. So I think I learn best through conversations with others. I think I've learned so much just through random meetings and learning things through those conversations with people. And it's like one of the oldest ways, right, to learn. You think about how before technology, how people would learn oral traditions, what I was talking about with, you know, indigenous groups, and how that passion for culture animation came about was that we had a very strong oral culture, like oral traditions. And if you look back into any ancient culture or any indigenous culture, you'll see that there. And so often now, like I try to let my curiosity actually get the better of me, because one of the benefits of the internet these days now is that, you know, you look up one thing And then it's really easy to be able to look up, another thing, and you can get lost in a rabbit hole sometimes. But that has also allowed me to learn a lot, right? And but I think these days with the internet, I don't think we ever kind of envisioned that we'd have the problem of having too much knowledge out there or too much information, whereby you don't even know what to trust sometimes. But that's probably a separate topic. In terms of the earliest things I remember teaching myself was Adobe Flash back in high school, and I remember I ended up teaching the teachers about it so that they could use it in their computer tech classes. So, I think the ability for me to be able to teach myself things just came about through curiosity while trying to solve your own problem, right? If there's a problem there and it's really bugging you, let that curiosity and that frustration carry you, because you end up learning a lot through the process of trying to figure that problem out. And that translates very well to entrepreneurs.
Facts. I didn't even realize it either. I'm looking back and I'm like, what did I do that was nerdy?
Yeah.
I definitely took apart computers and wiped them clean to see how fast they could run and didn't know what I was doing.
Yep.
And definitely also was similar to you as well, to where, like, if you look back and say, like, let the curiosity get the best of you, it's like I was always the super curious. Like, if you literally go back to any company that I've ever worked for, which is actually real quick, something that I also want to point out that I've noticed is similar characteristic. I'm on your LinkedIn right now.
Yeah.
And I see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 experiences from 2010 till today. So over 9 years, there have been 11 experiences that LinkedIn, or that you've identified to LinkedIn as to what you've done.
Wow. I
Just
haven't even
11.
looked at myself.
Right. Yeah. And so, like, the one thing I wanted to point out was that you have, like, a ton of things that you've done. And I've actually looked at my LinkedIn, like, self-conscious sometimes as to, like, man, like, this kid's a jumper. Like, what, like, look at all the experiences that I have. And I'm looking right now. I've never even, oh my gosh. Oh my goodness. It's still going. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 21. Holy, another word. 21. And you had, 13?
Yeah.
So I'm at 21 and you're at 13. So it's interesting because one of my first places that I worked at a college was an agency, and the CEO was, awesome. It's like super, like, if you imagine like lady boss, like she's the boss of, the marketing world. And like her thing was like sticking with the same place. And I know that when I was thinking about going to another place, she was like, man, like, you've got to learn to, like, stay in the same place. Like, you just haven't learned the things yet that, you're wanting to learn. Like, you'll get there. You're just not there yet. I'm like, yeah, I want to make more money and this, that. And, like, that was something that's interesting, that as I sit down and talk with more people, I'm realizing that everybody that I sit down with has so much experience that, like, it gets to the point to where it's like, yo, if you want to look at what I've done, just, like, go to my website or somewhere. Like, it's not going to be on my LinkedIn because whatever reason, right? Like,
yes,
you've just done so many things and experienced so many different cultures and people and mindsets and heart sets and emotions and everything. So I guess, like, could you share what having so many of those experiences kind of helped shape you into who you are today?
Yeah, sure. I mean, that's a good point, right? Like, what we put on LinkedIn, professional resumes, is obviously what we want the professional face to look like, right? And so if you really, and this is one thing I kind of get at when I'm chatting to people, even just interviewing them for a job, right, is, tell me about your family. How did you deal with stuff around in your family? Or, tell me about all these other experiences that you had that are not on your resume, because that is often the glue and will give you a better insight. having all the different cultural experiences, I think that's what's allowed me to almost be a chameleon between different types of communities. So having a background in programming allows me to understand the tech and also to be able to relate to developers. Having then gone to sales and marketing allows me to, speak that language as well. Having the tech understanding again allowed me, when I went into the corporate environment, to be fine in the operations department. Then, the fascination with people, and dealing with people growing up, that comes from my mother. She was definitely the people person, and she used to be known for having like the best like house parties, whereby
Sounds like my dad.
Interesting, right? And so you obviously learn and observe from that, and then through that, I think having jumped to different countries, that also allowed me to look at all the different cultures and learn to respect them. So the way I look at professional communities too, it's the same thing. Between different companies or even different teams, each of them have their culture, their own cultures, subcultures, and so I just treat them as such. You just gotta, if you want to understand them, learn their language, learn their customs, all of those things. And as a result, I think I definitely, I'm a supporter of globalization, because, well, for me, it's not an easy question when somebody asks, where are you from? Both my parents are mixed. I've got an Australian citizenship, even though I was born in Fiji. But then I grew up most of my formative years in Bangladesh at an American international school. So even being here in LA, like, people think I'm from the US, but I'm not. Then when, I go to other countries, my accent will dip in and out. But I've learned to accept that that's just part of who I am now, that I am mixed, and I'm proud of it. One day, if there's a Earth citizenship, that'll probably be the most accurate reflection. You
said Earth citizenship?
Yeah, man. If that ever happens to come about, like, that would be entirely accurate for if somebody asks where you're from. I'd be more comfortable saying that than any one of the countries that make up my sort of heritage.
Wow. This could be a perfect place to put that. Did you hear the new Earth song by Lil Dicky?
No, I haven't.
Oh my gosh. It's going to be, you're going to laugh because I'm going to find it on Spotify right now. That's how much I'm like, you are going to laugh. Yeah. Earth. All right. Do you use Spotify to listen to music, by the way?
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. So copy song link, go to Twitter DM, messages. Don't you love technology that I can go to an app and send it to you, and you're in another state, and you just got a song that is directly correlated to Earth citizenship. So this song is literally Little Dicky is on the Earth hugging it as the cover art.
Nice, yeah, I see.
Yeah, it's a crazy collab. It's an awesome song.
Yeah, I'll listen to it after this.
Oh yeah, definitely check it out. And so I guess kind of you're talking about people a lot, and I've realized that that's a similar, commonality that you almost, when you start to realize that all of the experiences that you've had up till now have done nothing but created and shaped you into who you are, and you are you. So all the things that you were in second grade are probably still there. They just been enhanced, or other things have been enhanced but then deleted. It's just like a program is kind of how I look at things. Like, I feel like I'm like a machine in certain levels, right? And I learn different things. And so one thing that I realized is like, oh my gosh, like, what sorts of people helped me get here? Like, what communities or people did I look up to get here, and why, right? So like, who are some of those people, and like, what are some of those communities for you?
Yeah, family. I mean, of course, family, like, being like the first main community, right? And then growing up, the community of my school, the international school, I think that one thing that has been really cool is that as I go to each country, there's usually an alumni from my class, or, just somebody from the school that I grew up in that country. So I always make an effort to reach out to them. And the cool thing is like, no matter how much time has passed by, everybody that has come from that school or community, it's like no time has passed. The conversations go smooth. I was just in Hawaii, and I met up with a girl who I hadn't seen for 18 years, right? And the conversation picked up like we had just, we saw each other like last week. And I just think that's crazy. But it's also really, really good to know, in terms of having like, I guess, support networks and people that you can trust. After that, I would say other communities. Man, it's such a mix, right? As somebody who's all about people, like my role has always been at the edge of communities as well. Like I help bring people together, but I'm also not always fully part of it. I don't know if that makes sense or not, but as someone who kind of is the glue and likes to keep people together, yeah, it's almost like you have to be there surrounding it, like little Dicky with the planet, but then not necessarily being in it fully, so that you can still always help the community with outside connections too. Because as much as I love communities, sometimes you can also create echo chambers, right? Which we kind of see with social media. But yeah, I would say that all the different groups that I have passed through, I like connect through them like glue. That makes sense. And just, yeah, helping them to connect better.
No, I think that makes total sense. And it's funny because it's like I was figuring out myself in the last couple of weeks, like, what is this community builder thing? Like, what is that brand that you're building? And then I realized, like, that's been nothing but me. And like you said, like being in it, but not fully in it, to where one of my guests, Kevin Wynn, guest and friend, who is the founder of People and Company, and they do something similar to where they, helicopter in to different communities and organizations, and they also help them with their community strategies. And, they bring the clarity to the people and the businesses and organizations who like strive to bring their people, the best, right? They are, wanting to feel magic. And so on the website, it says, communities feel magical, but they don't come together by magic. So they're also like yourself, like they are the glue, but they're not essentially the infrastructure. They're just kind of like bringing the playbooks along. That's okay, boo. They're bringing the playbooks along with them that they've learned, and now they're helicoptering in, and they're also writing a book, right? So it sounds like similar to yourself. And I'm also a little bit further back on the journey, right? So I'm just developing my voice and my brand. So it's starting through the podcast channel, and now it's going to eventually evolve into I don't know what. So I think it's really important for people to realize that, like, if you're someone that just wants to be, involved in things, like that's okay too. Another guest of mine, Ali Barrett, he also is someone similar. Like he likes to be known as, a serial founder, right? Like someone who has like multiple ideas. And like his thing is like he loves like being the spark, and he loves like starting things. And so it sounds like that's another one. It's like, well, like where were all these people all my life, and how come I never knew where they were? And it's very fun just to realize like there's other people out there that also feel that, they don't necessarily want to start so many things, and that they can also, help develop and evolve and get people to, just talk about stuff, right? Like I'm the same way. I love talking to people. I love connecting with them. So it's just like super nice to realize like, hey guys, like there are others like us. So let's talk.
Exactly. And, it's interesting you mentioned the spark, because that's essentially, you need the catalyst. I call them the catalysts, to help get sort of community movements going. But then at the same time, the other aspect of community is, how do you keep them together? Because there's one thing to get the spark going so that you can easily pull people together, but then like also keeping them together for the long run is like, the second part to that. And I think that's where fire, so even the name there, we use that because one, well, it sounds like fire. And two, the actual Samoan word means to span two divides, like a bridge, or in other words, to bring the village together. And, we kind of look at fire in the old traditional sense with, like the campfire, and everybody huddled around it, and, creating a fire that like is warming but not destructive. If you know the Fire Festival, that story on Netflix. Did you see
Mm-hmm.
that? Yeah, did you
Yeah, I
see that?
watched it. Yep.
Right. So that's an example of like not knowing how to handle the element of fire, and we look at that as well when we're building communities. That there's a lot of things that you can do for quick wins to get people together, which I think in sales and marketing you learn how to do. But I think why things like community management is popping up is because, well, it is becoming about things like empathy and creativity and all these other softer skills that haven't been so easy to sort of understand their true value. But I think that's changing. And so being able to understand how to use the element of fire to make things last, that is kind of like a beacon or a center, an anchor for us as well as we move forward. And to also light, get the fire going for people individually, and so that they're sharing that with each other in the community.
Right. And I think that's so important too. And to piggyback off that real quick, shout out to Kevin Wynn for that. In his book, one of the chapters that they initially were writing about was sparking the flame, stoking the flame, which is like similar to your glue, it sounds,
Yeah,
and then passing the torch kind of like to the next person.
exactly.
So I'm curious to see, how they've elaborated or updated and expanded on those sorts of, thoughts when they release their book.
Nice.
And so it also is interesting too, because I love what you said about creating a fire that is not destructive, and the bringing a village together around a campfire, because those things, when you think about quick wins in the long game, you think about like, oh wow, like how do you harness safe heat? And in one of my episodes with Priya Parker, I learned that safe heat is something that she learned from Ida Benedito, who is, an awesome facilitator, and we'll also have links to her in the show notes as well, who talks about safe heat and how to garner safe heat, right?
Yeah.
So it's like a 4-step process, and it's like, well, is there, like, what's the risk involved? And then what's the gift, right? So what are the give and takes? And then if the gift is greater than the risk, then like, is it okay if we do it? And then if the gift is greater than the risk, then like, let's go ahead and see what happens. And as long as everybody's on board with that, then that's kind of like a framework for bringing safe heat and kind of like turning up that dial on the fire to where everybody's aware that it's about to get really hot.
Yeah.
And like, this is how we're going to move through it together. Like, get ready, like take off your hoodie if you're getting too hot or whatever the case is, or leave your emotions at the door. But like, we're going to talk about this now. And so like, that's such a simple framework that so many people can use, even in, work conversations, relation conversations, friend conversations. Like, I've used it a lot, and I'm like, hey, like, this is what's bothering us, or this is what the crossroad is. Like, do you want to talk about that? And if not, then we probably can't go forward right now. Like, we're probably going to have to come back and visit this later. And so, yeah, it's just like really, really important to just remember those sorts of things, and empathy and creativity that, like, for the longest time, like you've heard as well and you've experienced, it's those things used to get made fun of. Like, I used to get made fun of for being empathetic, and all of the roles I've been in, literally, I think my first job, I've had a female CEO and a female manager. And then I've also had another female manager. So that's 3 female managers. And then I've had 1 male manager. But it's been interesting. Like, that's 3 out of 4 have been female, which I'm not going to make assumptions, but they skew empathy. And they just know how to care deeper. And it's just something that for the longest time, males get, scrutinized and made fun of for being soft. But then it doesn't affect me, because I'm like, wait, I'm not soft. Like, I can crush you. Like, if you really want to play whatever game, like, I will beat you. Like, that's just my mentality. And, and like, that goes and comes, and like, you have to remind yourself that, like, you were this person, like, you achieved these things. Like, don't shortchange yourself. And like, for me, I'm like, oh, when I hear people talking about running and doing marathons and this and that, I'm like, yeah, that sounds fun. But like, I'm not a marathon runner. Like, I was a triple jumper. I was a safety. Like, I don't run marathons. Like, that's not who I was. You know what I mean? So like, for me, like, playing flag football is how I still get that. And going for runs here and there where I could do short sprints and like jump over benches in the park, like, that's fun. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So like, realizing that all these things are now, making me who I am. And then now I can just, be empathetic and be creative, and I'm getting rewarded for that now. But
Yep.
before, it wasn't like a thing that was cool. And so now it's interesting to see like the non-empathetic humans of the world and to see the empathy and then realize like how to bring it to the table. And I literally have a journal, and it's on Twitter as well, but I have a journal where it's kind of like, I don't think it's called minimalistic journaling. And I write a square, and each day on the side, on the bottom left, on the outside of the circle, I'll write what day number it is. And so like, I think today might be like day 10,227. I think actually, no, let's do this. So time and date, date, duration between two dates. I was born. Actually, let's do you first. What day were you born?
15th of August.
So this is 8/15. And then what year?
86.
1986. Okay. And then today. So calculate duration. You are 11,972 days old. Congratulations.
Wowzers.
And
you put it like that.
Right? It's funny. And this is something that I learned from another podcast guest, Jason Gaynard. And I forget which episode it was from, but I can also link out to that in the show notes as well.
Yeah.
And I'm on day, I was close. I said 10,227. But I'm actually, the funny thing is 10,227 is, I think, my birthday. So the 26th would be 26. The 27th would be 27. No, 28 would be the 28th. So no, I'm 10,225 days old. But the reason I even pointed this out is because on the side here, there's also, I'll just send you the link so you have it to use. There is something that says alternative time units. And I find that very interesting because of a few things. Like number one, that is also converted into 1,460 weeks in 5 days. It's 245,400 hours. Like, that's crazy. Like, I've been alive for 245,400 hours.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Like, what have I done? Like, am I satisfied with what I've done? And I don't know. I'm going to make an assumption here and say that your answer is going to be no. And for anybody that's hungry, the answer is going to be no. And so once I realized that, and like that message from Jason, it was just like, oh my God, like I'm not happy with what I've accomplished. Like, I got to start going. And like, that's what I started last year. Like, I found, someone who was willing to spend the time in James Carberry from Sweetfish Media. Shout out to you, James, who helped me get this thing launched. Like, it was literally, this is actually a crazy meta circle thing that Gary probably would love to listen to at some point when we get in front of him. James was meeting with, and I'll have to ask if this is allowed, but like, he was meeting with, VaynerMedia people the day that he met with me. And I had lunch with him. And at that table, he said, content-based networking is the way of the future. Like, this is, what the foundation of, B2B growth is built off of, right? Like, build relationships and build friendships with your, top, people. And through that, you might do business with them. That's it. And literally that lunch, he literally sent his designer a quick, hey, I have a guy who wants to start a podcast about community building. In 30 minutes, I had a logo back. And I was like, whoa, like what? I was like, what in the world is this? And then I was like, okay, so I guess I have to do a podcast episode now. And then downloaded his guide to starting a podcast. It's like a 26-step guide, which I can also put in the show notes. And that's what I used as the foundation to get started. Got my mic. He was my, second guest. My first guest was Cecil Phillip, which I just did my second interview with him on Monday of last week, which I haven't even put out the one that we did last year. So it's kind of funny that I didn't get that out yet. But it's crazy that this story started with Gary Vee, and it still has him in this moment right now, which is like crazier because literally it's like, wait, we're just two people that just listened to his go do,
Yeah.
and this is what happened. Like a year later, I did all of this stuff, and you've done so much crazy stuff that a year before you would have been like, oh, like
Yeah.
I don't think I could be a podcast host or do whatever it is that you've accomplished. So just wanted to like point that out, that it's not so crazy that when you've listened to successful people do successful things, you start finding success, and it's okay to talk with people about it because it's weird, it's unfamiliar. And what better way than to learn with someone who recently went through it or is currently going through it, to learn how to evolve and get to the next level. And so like that's kind of what a quick lesson that I want to share with people. It's like, hey, like me and George literally are two people that just listen to the same guy, happen to be tweeting about the same stuff. And oh, by the way, like Gary didn't spend any money on that Super Bowl ad. That was a Twitter post.
Exactly.
So like that's another crazy thing, that when you're bringing people to the future. And today, did you see, by the way, hashtag Saturday morning on Twitter?
No, I didn't.
Oh my gosh.
What's happening there?
So Gary Vee put out a TV series for kids.
What? Wow.
Yeah. So if you go to hashtag Saturday morning. So I was listening to Crushing It, which I'm surprised I haven't finished or listened to it yet, because I realized that.
Yeah.
Right. So I had it. And then, right, the first post is, guess who? 1:37 p.m. Like, of course it is, trending on Twitter, like, duh. And he just premiered his own Saturday morning cartoon, Lil V.
Wow.
What did it say? Okay, so let me get better at this. Sorry, Gary, I'm messing this up. So Gary V just premiered his own show, hashtag Saturday morning cartoon, Lil V. Hashtag Lil V. Will open up kids' eyes to what's possible in business, especially if they're showing early signs of entrepreneurial talent, and show them how empathy and kindness can be cool. And like, I watched that episode when I was getting my hair cut, and I literally was like, yo, bro, this is crazy.
Yeah,
like,
wow.
I'm not even going to ruin it for anybody, because like, this is something that's I feel like gonna be like the next Mr. Rogers sort of level content. And I personally am going to put out some sort of animated something. I just haven't gotten there yet. And that's, I think, one important thing. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, this is great. Like I'm watching the trailer at the same time, and it's like it's so like low. I won't say low budget, but like it's so simple. And it's going to be so effective. That's what's going to make it effective.
Bro, when I watched it this morning, I think it had like 17,000 views, and let's see what it's at now.
Almost 30,000 now.
So it's at 30,000, but yo, it's at 29,000. But like, yo, the intro music, bro, I was already bopping. And like, that reminds me too about the Super Bowl ads. Like, that's another thing that is interesting in marketing, which can honestly lead us into trends. Is like Gary Vee got us to talk about this during the Super Bowl ad, and did the Venmo thing, which got us to talk about community and connected us about the Singapore network. And we haven't even gotten that, but we're going to get to that. Yeah. And then did you see the Chance the Rapper ad that was in there with Doritos?
Yeah, yes.
With the Backstreet Boys. So look at that, right? Like, who eats Doritos? Us, right? Like, the Backstreet Boys is us, and Chance the Rapper is us.
Yeah.
So like, that was brilliant.
Yeah, man.
And like, it's just crazy that now that, he can use these mediums like YouTube and Instagram to like talk to people. Like, it really blew my mind as I was listening to Crushing It, to where Gary said that he was on, Musical.ly and TikTok and Snapchat. And like, I knew he was there, like, from watching his content, right? Like, clearly I've watched a lot of it, but I didn't really understand because I wasn't on those platforms.
Yeah.
And once you start to put out content, like, that's what I would recommend, honestly, to my previous self, is to focus on one channel first.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I went from podcasting to video to Instagram to Twitter to YouTube to LinkedIn to blogging to email newsletters to Shopify to Spotify to iTunes to Alexa to I don't even know the platforms, right?
Yeah.
And through that, I was like, wait a minute, just focus on voice. Like, you are a talker. Like, you've been a talker since you were a kid. Alexa, stop listening. Okay, she's gonna act stupid now. She's done. And so now use that medium, like use the microphone, like use that as your platform to get all this stuff out.
Mm.
And I didn't know that I can't do all that stuff. Like Gary Vee has a team.
Yeah, exactly.
He has a team of people that literally document him from multiple angles every day. He's like the walking version of like Kim K. Literally.
Yeah. Yep.
All of the producers and all those things. And so for people like us that are like wanting to like get together and do all this stuff and want to document our journeys, like it's hard to do all of that when you've never done any of it, let alone find your voice and figure out what you can talk about and all that stuff.
Yep.
So just want to recommend to like anybody that is interested or thinking about starting or wants to be like their own documenter, like I definitely would recommend starting with one medium. Like pick a tool, right? Like if you think you're better in front of a video, just use videos. If you think you like voice better, use voice. If you're really good at writing and want to get better at writing and maybe want to write short stories and novels or cartoons or movies, whatever, go write, start a blog. Like, so there's so many different mediums now to where anybody can create anything. Like in Crushing It, there was a part about someone who on Snapchat, they could use filters to overlay images and make creations that they could never draw in real life. Right. The fact that you said, is like exactly the point. It's like, wait a minute, like this kid can make a living on Snapchat making, short images for businesses. Like, could you imagine when like enterprises get to like Snapchat? Like, all these enterprise companies are going to spend so much money on like social media posts that kids learn how to do. Exactly. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
And this is what's going to happen. So I just think it's fascinating to now be living through it and be playing in it. And I think one thing that I haven't taken advantage of enough is actually investing in ads. Like one of my friends is a marketer, and like a couple of years ago, he was like, man, like, have you ever marketed anything? And I was like, And I was like, I couldn't really think of it because like I couldn't pull from the experience. But then I looked back and it's like, what are you talking about? Yes, you have. Like I worked at a marketing agency. You know what I mean? Like I worked on campaigns. I worked on grassroots campaigns. I built them from the ground up. I did contests. I did, email campaigns. I've done website redesigns. I've done all that stuff. And I just didn't accept that I was a marketer. So I just think it's like important to pull out your key skills and focus on like one craft and like one medium. And then once you get good enough to where, like I said, you can put together an agenda in like 10 minutes before the call and still have a good conversation, like you've gotten to a level that you're not as nervous and you can execute on. And so by bringing each other together, like myself and George, it's like, wait, like these are two podcasters that have already learned this stuff. So like we can help share our stories to maybe give you a piece of advice or a tidbit or an insight that you can use on your journey that will help you get there faster. And through that, that is the true power of community, because we're sharing information and knowledge that was before decentralized, and we're centralizing in this thing that we're now calling a community, which is nothing more than, a central place or space for sharing ideas, thoughts, feelings, and emotions. And together, every time that we meet and gather, we're now making that bond and connection to each other and to the community stronger. And through that, we're now growing things. And I think the real future of the world, honestly, is in communities, in organizations, and enterprises are going to shift to this community-focused hierarchy or structure, if you will. I actually don't even want to say hierarchy. I'm going to say structure, because I think a community structure is something that all these enterprises are lacking. And it's all of these silos of different products and teams that are working on so many different initiatives and so many different things are important to them. And if you just realize that, like, if you just had one elder that knew everything, like the giver, that had the library of all the books, that could sit down and have chats with people, and it was literally their only job to be the giver of information inside of a company. Like, could you imagine if that's a role?
Well, like I think Salesforce were the first to experiment with that. Actually, I think they have somebody who actually performs that type of function.
So they're not just like a person who's been there that just does their, lunch and learn of like, hey, like I'm a
No,
product.
no, the full-time salaried guy who literally like will listen to people's issues and also like give advice and like coach them towards like what they want to be doing in life. And it doesn't have to be related to Salesforce, but they'll leverage Salesforce's resources. There's a woman. Have you heard of Erica Cool by any chance?
No. Okay, so it's kind of like we have someone like that. We use a woman named Julia Mallory. She comes in. She actually did a diversity and inclusion training with us a couple weeks ago that I had the opportunity to participate in.
Yeah, I don't know. Well, so this Erica Cool isn't the one who has that role, but at Salesforce, just look it up. I think they're like a dream coach or something. I think that's their title, or like a head of dreams or something. Because Salesforce has the money to be able to like
Right.
experiment with roles, right? But Erica Cool, she's the VP of Community at Salesforce. Really cool person. She's probably another person like you might want to interview for the podcast. But she's been very strong and adamant about bringing community to a respectful level in enterprise, and they're doing it at Salesforce. So they're kind of like leading the way in that sense.
Yeah, it's funny you say that because when I went out to SF to Demand Base headquarters,
Mm.
I saw I saw that and I was just like, oh my gosh, like this is crazy
Mm.
because they have so much money in
Yep.
that space, in that city, that they can literally run the city. Like they can rename San Francisco Salesforce City.
Yeah.
Like,
Yep.
really though.
Yep.
And I really like that you mentioned that like they're trying to bring it together. And it's just one thing that you just realize is just a piece of growing. And do you watch Billions by chance?
No, but so many people have been telling me to watch it. Just time wise, need to get some time to like sit down and watch some of these things.
I mean, right. And I mean, obviously we all have to make space to unplug and disconnect. And
Yes.
that's one of the, things that I like to do is, watch Billions and watch TV shows, right? Billions, House of Cards was the one that I really like. And then what was the other one with Marty Khan? Um, House of Lies. That one was very interesting. But Wendy is the psychiatrist that works at Axe Capital. And just real quick bio on her, Wendy combines an avid intellect with a keen understanding of human nature. She used those skills to help Bobby Axelrod build his hedge fund from the ground up and now works as the company's star in-house performance coach. So it sounds like
Yeah.
she's Wendy Rhodes.
Yeah. Sounds similar.
Got it. So yeah, I think that's like a resource that now, and it was funny, I was talking to my barber about this and I was like, yo, it's crazy because they should have a psychiatrist or like someone to talk to, like almost like a mediator in every single like small or local business to make it normal to talk about how you're feeling. So like
Mm.
bring back the barbershop days and
Yeah.
bring back like the days of where like you got coffee and tea. And just for the people who already do that, like this isn't for you guys. Like you guys are already building community and connections and all those things. So this is more just like geared towards the people who are, not sure what to do or not sure where to find them because like they're there, but they're just not being highlighted. And so it's like, how can we highlight and show people simpler ways that they can connect? And, one way is making it cooler to talk about empathy and cooler to talk about your emotions. So that way you don't blow up in your company meeting and, have everybody upset or looking like you are crazy.
Yeah.
Awesome. So yeah, sorry we went off on a little bit of a rant. But I think it was definitely, in line and on topic.
Yeah.
But so I guess kind of going into the next section, just talk to us about some of the upcoming trends that you're seeing. So I have a couple of things down: community strategy, community in general, community leadership coaching, creativity, empathy, are some of the things that I thought could, get your brain started. So feel free to go in whatever direction or in the trends that you're seeing.
Sure. Okay. Community. Some trends I'm seeing now. This depends on which part of the world you're talking to. In Asia, I think right now it's a very good opportunity for like professional community folks if they're looking to help or assist others, there's been a growing interest in community management in a lot of developing countries in Asia. But from the let's say the Western side, so US, Europe, the shift that I'm seeing there, and this is kind of being confirmed by some of the influencers in the space, even on Twitter, is that community professionals are actually taking, in terms of career growth, they're starting to take on jobs in other more traditional areas. So they might have been a community manager, but then end up as a product manager, or maybe in HR, or even ops sometimes. And there are two reasons for this. It might be, one, it's still quite difficult for people within organizations that don't quite get community to kind of box you in anywhere, and figure out how to work with community professionals. As an example, even in my last fintech job, I was the enterprise community manager for like the entire all the regions, but they started me out in operations, and then they put me into the marketing team. So even there, they didn't know how to fit me into the more traditional departments. And so this may change, but I think the community might end up being called something else. And I think this is because there are still a lot of parts of society that associate community not just with business, of course, but like, the more traditional civic communities. And that has been, I think, a thorn in the side of a lot of community professionals. However, if you look up Rachel from the Community Roundtable, they're about to put out a report with findings from their interviews with a whole bunch of different organizations. And there are an increasing number of professionals who are moving up to like an executive level as a community professional in more organizations. So I think there definitely is an increase in interest, but I think there may be a shift as well in terms of how we call communities in different parts of the world. So yeah, those are some of the main things I'm seeing right now.
Yeah, no, I love that. And Rachel's awesome. I had the pleasure of speaking with her last summer, and we had a quick chat about community, and definitely have talked with her multiples of times. And the other thing I really love what you said about community evolving is that makes so much sense, because that's exactly why I started this podcast as well, which people I feel like who've listened to the show can kind of understand, and the people that know me. And I got into community and was working at Meetup, like the community company. Yep. And I was a sales guy with biz dev experience, with a marketing and, ed tech background. Yep. And I was going there, and to learn community, I was like, I got to go talk to people. Mm-hmm. So what did I do? Started a podcast, right?
Yeah.
And so in talking to people, I realized that community is something that like these large organizations don't really get. No. Because the way that community is still perceived in that world is that community is, the outreach and the people we give, $1 million to out of our $700 billion of revenue. Exactly. That's community. And so that
corporate social responsibility in Australia, the CSR.
Facts. CSR is the name of the game for them. Mm-hmm. And so I'm realizing, like, I legit kid you not, I was prospecting a company the other day, and I saw that they gave away $1.5 million in student, loan repayment, right?
Yeah.
And meanwhile, you have, someone that Robert Smith pledged to pay off Morehouse's graduate student loans. One human said he's going to pay off this year's Morehouse graduating classes student loans. And this multi-million-dollar company only gave $1.5 million to these kids. And I'm sitting here like, yo, something does not sit right with me with this. Like, I don't know what it was. I laughed at it. I wanted to tweet about it, and I wanted to expose the company, and I was like, nah, that's not how you do this. But it's crazy, because when you get so caught up in emotions, you don't realize that, like, okay, calm down and look at what you can do. And so you realize, like, you can do things like M&T Bank, for example. they're doing a sponsorship with the Jets to where they're giving a small business $100,000.
Mm.
That is something that I can get on board with.
Yeah.
Like, could you imagine? Like, I would compete for New York Giants podcast sponsorship. What? You know what I mean? Like, I would compete for that.
Yeah.
And so, like, if every football team did that, like, that's a whole other conversation. I'm sure they have contests and things like that, but there's no centralized location for sports competitions to get sponsorships like a draft for podcasts. Like, that's not a thing.
Yeah.
Like, neither was video gaming, and now that's a thing. So now being early on in this space, it's like, well, what do we want to do? And so, yeah, I definitely love those trends and think, that's another one. Here it comes. Excuse me.
Oh, bless you.
Sorry. Thank you. Like, did you see the video from the guy Gary Vee drafted that sneezed at himself and said thank you? Or blessed himself and said thank you? It's like, that's the world. That's the future. It's like people with personalities like that can shine and be themselves and just like go with the flow. Like, that's what it is. Like, I guess going on that note, like, kind of what's up next for you? Like, what's next up with Faya? What's up next with the, It Will Come show, or what other projects that you have, cooking that you want to talk about?
Yeah, sure. Well, one thing I forgot to mention from the trend side, and this is connected to what's next, is to really look out for, well, I'm looking at the next 10 or 20 years, but what's happening in the Bitcoin space. That's an area that I got involved with as well. Originally 2013. And then it picked up more from a community side, well, I'd say 2016. And the reason why I say to look out there is because what's happening under most people's noses right now is like a complete rewiring of our financial plumbing system. And as that starts to make its way out, it will also kind of change the way that we interact with one another from a tech standpoint. And how? Well, it's like imagine if when you're interacting with people online, every time a piece of data is being sent or received, you're actually earning or spending, say, Bitcoin, right, in the form of microtransactions. And what this also means is that when it comes to data and privacy, you have a lot more control than what, say, you have now. So right now, we think that we're using things like Facebook for free, or even these services for free. But the third-party vendors are able to use our data and sell it off. In a Bitcoin type of world, what is currently being developed is that every piece of information is actually a transaction now, and you actually will have more control over how that information gets disseminated, and then everybody is almost getting paid in real time, and you can actually see that and track that depending on permissions between one another. Now, this goes a bit deeper, like a whole nother hour's worth of discussions on it. But hello.
Yeah, no, you're here. You just broke up a little bit.
Okay. Yep. No worries. But yeah, from a community standpoint, I think it's going to have a lot of impact on social networks, etc. And you'll also see that a lot of social networks are trying to move towards what I call a small world network, whereby they're trying to make things more closed, intimate, and private, as opposed to what we.
Interesting. Right? And say that. So who's trying to do this again?
All the major social media networks. So we're talking, Facebook, Twitter, even LinkedIn, and how you can see this is, LinkedIn trying to put some focus on their groups. Facebook also now prioritizing.
Bro. Oops. Yeah, you're hitting me. I have a lot of things I'm about to unleash on you real quick, but yes, keep going. Sorry.
Yep. So all of these things are, what we call small world networks. So before it was like the open wide network. Now it's about the small world network. And so Facebook realized that connecting the whole world is not enough, right? That's fine. You've connected everybody. Now what? It's actually about meaningful connections. And that goes back to the village model, right? Where you felt like you knew everybody. And this is where I see how that kind of impacts how we see communities as well. And where I see a lot of like old principles coming back again, just in new packaging.
Facts. I think that's so important to like think about too, because I was getting chills when you were saying about how, the small world networks and how like we're talking in a world to where Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, Snapchat, and LinkedIn are quote unquote small world networks. Like that's insane to so many people right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, keep going.
Yeah, and you'll see too, like how in the 90s, right, we had the movie with Will Smith, the 6 Degrees of Separation. So our understanding of how social networks worked was that we thought, oh, it takes about 6 degrees between everybody before you can get to say, oh wow, we all know each other. Whereas if you look at LinkedIn, what's the furthest degree connection that you've ever met, even though you might have gone quite far and wide? So there's first degree connections, right, where those people know at least one other person that as a first degree connection. Second, and then third, do you know what the furthest away degree connection you have on LinkedIn is?
Like what would an answer be? Like 5? Would that be like an answer?
Well, yeah, I mean, you could say if you can actually find a 5th degree connection, but actually, yep. So if you go to your friends list on LinkedIn,
I'm going there now.
You can usually.
Is this a hack? This isn't in the product, is it?
Via. No. This is more. You'll.
All right. So see connections, right?
So yep, or you can try yep. So if you go to connections, so I went to my network and connections.
I see the results.
All right, and then search with filters.
Search with filters. Are you in Sales Nav or just regular LinkedIn?
Just regular.
Okay, so all filters. All right.
So search with filters, and then you should see like first an option at the top bar that says first, second, or third.
Plus. Yeah, I only see second. No third plus is checked for me.
There you go. All right. So that means most of your connections are either first or second degree connections. Mine shows the furthest away is 3. So
wait, how do you get to 3?
That means that like I have met somebody who is that far out of my first and second degree connections. Now, the weird thing is, even though I'm traveling around the world, people I'm connecting with in LinkedIn, even though I've never met them in my life, they're still connected somehow to my first and second degree connections.
Interesting. So technically, in order for me to get this third level connection filter unlocked, I would have to connect with someone who my second degree is connected with that I'm currently not in their network of.
Yeah, or not even, or they don't even touch your first or second degree connections.
Right, but that's with like my whole network though. Like that's crazy. Like how do you search for that? Like they need to make a filter for that. Like because like I don't have the time for that right now. There's but no way. That's so cool though.
So this goes back to the small world network, and it also goes to like perhaps maybe some of our biases that the types of people we connect with, the reason why we connect with them is because maybe we have a lot of similarities, and then it just so happens that they happen to know our first or second degree connection somewhere within our networks on LinkedIn. And this is what creates a small world effect, whereby when you're meeting people, even though you're going around the world, or even just around, say, the States, they will know somebody that you know for sure, and you'll go, wow, doesn't this feel like a small world? So this is the power of things like LinkedIn, Facebook, etc. But then it's going that next step now where you actually still at least know the group of people that you're connected to. I think that the other bit is that we may be connected to a lot of people, but how many of them do you really know?
Right. And that's my thing. And I don't even know, maybe this is like another episode or something we could do like offline. But one thing that I've been doing more with this documentation is through like, can you imagine this place where like, all right, we have all this content that we've made, right? Like like I said, 7,000, whatever many videos. Like imagine, so like I'm imagining me loading these videos into this like room that's this like blockchain, like segmenter or something, right? Yeah. And in this room, you're going to give each one of my videos a unique tag from 1 to 7,775.
Yep.
And from that point on,
it's
everybody
dropping off soon.
Okay, Eva, thank you. And with every single time, you realize that actually, let me see if I can keep her on so we can. Let me just try.
Mhm.
because this is all about trying and going with the flow. Um,
And I may have to head out in about like 10 minutes, if that's all
yeah,
right.
same. I know. I looked
Yeah.
at the time and I was like, let me just see if she can say it. I'll put it not. Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
Um, crap. See, now it's Eva. You messed up my train of thought. What was I talking about?
Blockchain.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, blockchain and like staying on it. So now my videos have a unique number on each one of them. So I'm curious, like, is that like a thing that like blockchain is like going to help with? Like, because
Hmm.
I'm the type of person where I would record every single piece of audio and video and want it to go somewhere and then segment it based off of, well, what can I put on LinkedIn? Then it would go to this LinkedIn place, get a LinkedIn tag, and then it would be safe for LinkedIn. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
every single post would then, from there, it would go to LinkedIn's actual repository. And I would own all of my content. So all this copyright stuff, like all the
Exactly.
businesses that exist now won't exist.
Yep.
And
So
so like
that's
it's like,
yeah.
sorry, go ahead.
No, 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 you're spot on, man. Like I'm just like like agreeing that like that's essentially like the original envisioned Bitcoin type of world, whereby the underlying data actually you own, and it can be ported over to any service, right? But every time that it's ported, like the underlying root data you own, and it knows. And so anytime anybody interacts with it, so we're already doing this on
So,
this. Yeah, we're
you
already
just
doing
messed
this.
me up. I just thought about like how much Bitcoin Gary Vee would have. That's sorry. This is like one
Yes,
of those.
he'd
This
be a
I'm
rich
gonna say this
motherfucker.
out. Yeah, bro, I would be rich right now
Yeah,
if I could get Bitcoin for empathy, bro. I'd
yeah,
be rich.
yeah.
And so like that's the thing where I'm like, oh my gosh. I don't know if anyone heard the excitement, but like I've had so many emotions over the I'm turning 28 on Tuesday.
Nice.
So like it's my golden birthday. Like there's
Mm,
so many emotions that have been going through me over the last like, couple of weeks.
mm.
And like shout out to Lauren, to Boo for keeping me sane through all this roller coaster and all these amazing things. And it's like, oh my gosh, like I'm realizing that like I am learning and continuing to build on the principles of empathy and personal development and growth and all the things that have been preached to me my whole life. And the traditional values are still instilled in me from my parents. Like I just bought a new watch,
Mm.
and it's a hybrid watch. It's a
Yeah.
smart, it's a normal looking watch with smart features, almost like some 007 type stuff.
Mm.
And it was interesting because I was like, you know what? Like an Apple Watch would be cool. And I
Mm.
would learn and get all the data and I'd be connected. But
Mm.
like I'm not as into the whole future as I thought I was. And I'm like, actually, I just want this normal looking watch that looks sleek. And I've gotten so many compliments on it.
Yeah.
So it's like, bless you. Welcome. It's a hybrid watch. And so like for me, it's like, well, I realized that all the things my parents talk about, like the Westerns and being from South Carolina and not going to college and going to New York and
Mm.
creating their own opportunities and meeting each other randomly at my uncle's wedding when my mom was babysitting someone, like all this stuff, like now I'm back in Brooklyn where they first met and had my brother on the other side of the park. Like all of this stuff is just like crazy when you look at it, but then you're like, wait a minute, like that's just my story.
Yeah.
Like that's my story.
Mm.
Um, but yeah, so like super excited to talk about the Bitcoin more, and just like that's something I was struggling to understand. Like when I tell you, I was like, yo, why are these people meeting up about like right now? If I go to Google and type in Bitcoin meetups,
Mm.
there are 4,925 Bitcoin groups with 1,735,614 members.
Yep.
I'll let that sink in for people for like 2 seconds.
Yeah.
1.7 million members and 4.9 thousand groups. And the crazy part is I'm going to go to the countries tab real quick. It's in 116 countries and 1,027 cities. Like this is a world that I've never explored, right? So like Ethereum and Bitcoin, and I'm thinking like people don't get it, right? So I was like, why do people think that Bitcoin is like gold or Bitcoin is like another form of money? But
Mm.
like it is. It's just not the way that you're thinking about it. Like Bitcoin is legit like Black Mirror. Like that is what Bitcoin is. Please correct me if I'm off.
No, no, man, you're spot on. And one thing people don't even realize is that like Bitcoin, well, there's a lot of politics around it, but there's three main Bitcoins at the moment. And yeah, there's a lot more happening in the background, which is probably a subject for another time.
Right. No, I definitely would love to hop into more of that and learn more about that topic. So yeah, I guess let's wrap up with that. So definitely realize that George is working on some Bitcoin things, and you know, it's one of those worlds that people talk about, but they don't really know much about. At least that's what my view on it has been. Like I've heard people, and I've tried to learn about it, but it didn't make any sense. Like I bought Bitcoin and realized that I lost money. It was like, what the heck? And now realizing that like it's not about the money value. Like the reason that, I guess I'm going to put this out there just to say it, because what the heck, I can say it. Like the reason that people lose money in Bitcoin or anything is because they don't know what it means. They don't understand it. So like if you put in money to a thing that is supposed to be the new way of operating everything, like, well, yeah, you're going to lose money because they don't even know what it means yet. Like they don't know who the big players are. It's the same way where the cannabis and marijuana industry was like 5-10 years ago. It's like all the same stuff. And so it's just happening to take a little bit longer because the guys who already built it say, hey, I have this technology over here, y'all. Like, what's up? And now the government is basically saying like, all right, y'all, we need to form an opinion around this thing and lead a charge to like make a decision. Yeah. And so now that's what we're living through.
Yep. And one thing for people listening too is just to look up something called MetaNet. This is
how do you spell that?
METANET. So MetaNet.
That sounds like the Bitcoin universe.
So that's phase 2 of Bitcoin. Phase 1 was Bitcoin, and some more things going to happen probably later this year and then early next year. So yeah, watch that space.
Wait, yo, I thought the page was supposed to keep loading. Like when I looked at it, because it looks like an Atari game. Right? Am I in the wrong place?
So where are you looking?
Metasoftware.com. It looks like an Atari.
No. Just look up Bitcoin MetaNet and then tell me what you see when you bring it up.
All right, hold on. Sorry. Bitcoin MetaNet. The start of MetaNet. Craig, right? Oh, I didn't see this one.
Yep.
Got it. All right, so I can dive into this. Got it.
Yes, you can. But later on, essentially, this is what I was talking about, that world of everything being connected to like Bitcoin microtransactions, every single piece of data.
Oh, that's crazy, because the company I work for now, we help businesses identify anonymous users from different B2B companies. And through, you know, cookies and IP patent technology, we help people understand like which businesses and companies are in market for their products and solutions. So we're like, I'm working in a company right now that's like on the brink of right before we're allowed to do all the info, and it's all going to be encrypted and safe. So it's kind of interesting that I never really thought about that until you brought this up to me. Like literally we help the anonymous become known, and we help businesses, you know, surface those insights to marketing and sales to help them align their efforts so they know who to focus on. Right. So like, it's that. So like now imagine someone like the government having that technology to then know who to align and focus on. That's what people are like, and in my head, I'm like, what's the problem? If you're not doing anything wrong, record away. Like I'm happy you're doing it for me. That's how I look at it. You know what I'm saying?
Yep. So that's where the thing around that, right, is like, I'm definitely more for the transparency and accountability. It's more about people having the ability to remain private, but not necessarily anonymous. I mean, that's like the Bitcoin world that we're looking at or speaking about with MetaNet. And this is where things get interesting.
Oh boy. This is going to be a fun birthday. This is going to be a fun one. Well, George, thanks so much again for hopping on. You know, I want to let you get back to, you know, what you're doing over there in California, right? You're in Cali?
Yep, I'm in Cali at the moment.
Nice. We'll let you get back to that. And yeah, man, like thanks definitely, guys, this is another lesson in reconnections, right? Like, no matter what, like, we know we're all busy, but let's just try, right? Like, it's all it is a DM. All it is a
Exactly.
tweet. And that can reconnect these things and get you to further places. And that's what we're trying to do. So hopefully from this call, like, this can literally be a case study for Gary, right? We could be like, yo, like, look what you did. We both did this thing a year later, and then your Super Bowl ad inspired us to connect. And now we have a New York community around your brand that we're also bringing our brands into. Like, you're the mothership brand and we're like the child companies, if you will. But yeah, super excited to hop on, really love chatting with you, man. And, super, happy that, we're getting ready to start doing some more amazing things.
Yeah, man. Appreciate the time.
You got it. And is there anything else that you want to leave anyone with before you hop off?
Oh, just a saying that I use on the show, which is through patience and persistence, remember, it will come. And that's definitely a hat tip to Gary Vee from the patience side. But the persistence, you even showed your persistence by constantly nudging me to do the interview. So thank you for that. But yeah, just remember, through patience and persistence, it will come.
Got it. Well, thanks so much, George. And with that, everyone, this was another episode of the Community Builder Podcast with Travis King. And we're logging out for next time. See ya.
See ya.